Hi, my name's Erica Gamet and welcome to my video channel. Today's video we're going to talk a little bit more about using GREP in InDesign. We're going to learn about something called wildcards. So we're going to see what those are. We're going to jump into that in just a second. And I'm also going to talk about a couple of GREP queries or searches that you already have in InDesign. So there's some secret ones hiding there for you to find, and we'll talk about those as well. So don't let GREP scare you. We're going to jump in and see that it actually can be easy and can be fun and can save you a lot of time. And hopefully you'll see why I love GREP so much. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. In this video, we're going to take a closer look at GREP and how we build expressions to find our patterns of text, because at its core, GREP in InDesign is finding patterns of text and then doing something to that text that fits that pattern. So one of the ways that we do that is with something called wildcards. So we're going to use a lot of wildcards to start off with, and they'll become more natural to you after a while, but we're going to look at a couple tools that we have to actually be able to use these wildcards and these expressions without having to memorize absolutely everything. So what I'm going to do when I first start working on an expression, I build it in the find change, even if I'm going to use it in a style. I mentioned in an earlier video that GREP is found in two places in InDesign, in the find change dialog box and within paragraph styles. So no matter how I'm going to implement my GREP expression in my document, I tend to try and build it in find change. And then what I do is I'll put some text in a frame. For instance, this text that we have over here in this frame, I'll put text that I think fits the pattern, and I'll also put some that are maybe similar to the pattern, but I don't want it to be found in GREP. And then as I build it in the find change, I just keep running find change. And what I want ideally is for it to find everything that in my mind should fit that pattern and not find anything that should not fit that pattern. So for instance, if I were looking for emails, I would come up with a lot of different emails, formats of emails that I would have that fit that pattern. And then I would also throw some in there that might be similar to something else, but if the pattern finds it and thinks it's an email and it ends up formatting it as an email and it's not an email, that's not good. So anyway, find change dialog, that's where I go ahead and build these. And we're going to, like I said, use wildcards to build these expressions. So I'm going to open up the find change dialog box, Command or Control F. And I want to make sure that I'm in the GREP tab. If you're in the text tab, this is probably something you've been using a lot. Find whatever specific text and change it to something else, with or without formatting as well. But what that does is it says look for the number 1, 2, 3. I know I'm specifically looking for 1, 2, 3. Well, maybe I don't know what 3 numbers I'm looking for, and I need to do a pattern, and that's what the GREP tab is for. So we want to come up to the second tab up here and choose GREP. When I do that, it looks pretty much the same. And believe me, you're probably going to get confused. I get confused all the time. I wonder why my GREP expression isn't working, and I realize that I'm in the text tab, and then it's looking for specifically whatever I've typed in here. So keep in mind, when I'm working in GREP, I'm going to be using GREP expressions and something that looks a lot like code or just gibberish, if you will. So I need to make sure that I'm in the right tab. So let's go ahead over to this frame that's here, this text frame. And when I'm working with GREP, I always try to narrow my search to a small area. And that is because sometimes I'm thinking, oh, okay, everything on these pages fits this pattern. This is great. For instance, in a previous movie, I showed phone numbers. We took these phone numbers and they were formatted all different ways. They were formatted with parentheses and dashes and dots and spaces and no spaces whatsoever, and we formatted it to look like a phone number. Well, if you just decided to search on the whole entire document and you have part numbers that are on, the last page of your document, and maybe those are 20 digits long, and you run this GREP expression that's looking for these phone numbers, well, the first 10 digits of those part numbers to GREP might look like 10 digits for a phone number and formatted as such. So for me, when I'm searching, I usually select a story, or I might even just select some specific text and tell it to search on the selection only. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and search on this story. And that way I just kind of keep it limited to just this one particular text story. Now I have my invisibles turned on, my hidden characters, so that you can see what sorts of things we have in this document. So let's get over to those wildcards. So wildcards are basically something that says find any whatever. So the first one we're going to start with is super simple. Find any digit. So I just want to be able to find any time there's a number in my text. So in this case, maybe I want to find a number and take that text any time it finds a number, and I want to say format it magenta just so it stands out. All right, so we're going to do something simple like that. So I'm going to come up to the find what field, and now if I know how to say any digit, I can just type that in. But in a minute, I'm going to show you how to get around that. So any digit is backslash, and if you don't know where the backslash is, it's above your return key or your enter key. It's also underneath the, it's on the same key as the vertical pipe, so just the line straight up and down. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit so we can see what we're typing here. Backslash and then D. That is a GREP wildcard for any digit. So when I say find any digit backslash D, I'm just going to click find next, and over in my text field it highlights that next digit. As I click through and keep saying find next, it finds any digit. So how does that help us? Well, if I had this selected and I said find any digit, and I come down here to change formatting, and we just say give it a character color. So let's say change that color to magenta. We'll say OK. And if I just say change all, change everything in the story, all my numbers just turned to magenta. I'm going to undo that because we didn't really need that. So that's how we find any digit, and that's a wildcard. Well, if we can't remember that, we can come over here to this little menu, and I call it a little secret menu because it doesn't really look like a menu until you roll over it and you realize, oh, maybe it does something. So it's special characters. So I'm going to click on that. We get this pull down menu. All right, so down here we have something called wildcards. So when I come over here, any digit, any letter, any character, any white space, we can find each of these. And again, we don't know what specific number we're looking for. It's just any number. So I'll say any digit. When I do that, it puts in that backslash D that we already had. Well, now we've just changed our expression. The expression is now looking for 2 digits instead of 1. So I'm going to say find next, and as I do it, it's going to go to the next set. So it's going to stop the search where it was after the 5, 6, and I say find next. It's going to move on from that point. What are the next 2 digits in a row? Because I've told it find any digit followed by any digit. Find next, and that's it. So that's how wildcards work. Let's look at a couple other ones that are in here. I have things like find any letter. All right, so we'll say find next. Now, if we look at this expression, let's actually zoom in on that. It's in these little brackets, and we'll talk about those in a later video because that's getting a little bit deeper. And this is just one way that this expression has been written. And you'll find that there's many ways to write that expression. For instance, that find any digit followed by any digit. Let's say I wanted to find those 10 digits in that phone number example. Well, the first time I did that, when I first started with GREP, I put backslash D 10 times to find the 10 digits in a row. I didn't need to do that. There's actually easier ways to do that. And again, that will be in a future video as well. How to find a specific number or a range of numbers so we can limit it to just 5 numbers instead of every number that might be out there. So we'll look into that as well. There's always different ways to express the same expression. And you will learn what works better when you get a longer document. Sometimes having a clearer GREP expression will actually speed up that search. Something simple like this, you would probably not even notice the difference. So let's get back to what that wildcard was that InDesign has put in there for us. When I said any letter, I get backslash L, that's a lowercase l, and backslash U. Well, each of those individually, backslash L is any lowercase character. Backslash U is any uppercase character. So if I put those two together, that means any letter. If I just wanted to look for any uppercase, I would do backslash and then lowercase l. When I say any, that's any lowercase letter, I say find next, and you notice it skipped over that capital F. because it's going to just look for lowercase. Let's start down here at this H. Say find next, find next, find next. So it skips over and only finds the lowercase. I can do the same thing and say find any uppercase. Find next, find next, find next, find next. So again, I can use these wildcards to build an expression. If I wanted it to find a number followed by a letter, I could do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just put in a lowercase h in that first line. So now I have one h. So let's create a really simple expression using our new wildcards. So I'm going to type \d, that's find any digit, followed by \lowercase l. That says any digit followed by any lowercase letter. So let's say find next, and it finds the one h together. It found that pattern. Again, it could have been 3x. It doesn't matter what combination I have in there, it fits that pattern. If I say find next again, it finds nothing else in that particular story. And once I say find next and change all again, remember, I've also told it to change the formatting. So now it's found that, and it changed the formatting for us. I'm going to undo that. Let's look at a couple more that we have in here for locations. I can also do things like find a location instead of just the wildcards, but we're just going to work with the wildcards right now. Let's find any white space. So I say find any white space, find next, and you notice one thing it does, it says it can't find a match. Well, if I zoom in over here and look, it says search selection. Once I've found something, even if I've undone it, it automatically keeps that selection selected. So try and remember to come back and say story. Otherwise, you might think, why is my search not working? All right, so let's say find next, and it finds the return character. That is a white space. Find next is it'll find the next space. It'll find the returns. And it will also, I'm going to zoom in down here, it will also find where we've used strange spaces, like thin spaces, hair spaces, any of those. So if I say find next, it even finds those spaces that are there as well. And one that we'll use a lot under wildcards is any character. Now before I did any letter, so that was just uppercase and lowercase letters. Any character is absolutely anything. So any of the glyphs that you can think of, including tabs as well, spaces, tabs, all of that, and anything but a hard paragraph return. So let's say any character. Now it hardly looks like anything happened, but if I zoom in, we can look and see that it's actually a period. And a period, that is something we're going to use all the time. So a period says find any character, and we're going to use this, like I say, a lot, because sometimes you're trying to find something that happens at the beginning followed by a bunch of text, but we don't know what that text is, and then followed by something else, and that's how we're going to fit this pattern. So we're going to use this period a lot because it means anything but a hard return. So I'm going to just unzoom out of that. So when I say find next, it's going to continue to find letters, punctuation. It jumps to the next line. It does not find that hard return. It will also find tabs. Let's go ahead and put a tab in here. So we'll go ahead and hit a tab and come back here, and I'll say find next, and it's going to find the individual tab characters as well. So everything except that hard return. So get used to using that particular wildcard, a period. It finds everything. And later on, we're going to talk about being able to distinguish between a period meaning any character and when we're actually looking for an actual literal period character. All right, so that's going to be in a later video as well. But the last thing I want to talk about with wildcards is something that we have that's already built into InDesign. So a lot of this you don't even have to build yourself. I'm going to jump to this next page here, and I'm going to look at some of this formatting. And anybody that gets text from other places is probably familiar with this sort of formatting that you get. Returns followed by another return, so you've got multiple returns. You've got the dreaded double space after a period up here. Let's actually zoom in over there. I've also got triple here. So if you're using the find in the text field, find space, and replace with a space, you know that it's not going to catch this third one. And if you've been doing that, you probably know that you have to run it 2 or 3 times to make sure you got rid of all of those. And that's all well and good, but there's an easier way to do it. Also, one thing that it won't find is if you get something like this. This person decided to use, I don't know, it's probably an end space. I'm not really good with each of the different types of spaces that are there and what their invisible characters actually are. But that's 2 different spaces that would not be found with find space and replace with, or find space and replace with space. So that wouldn't be found. And then, you might get somebody that's just done some really crazy stuff. Let's actually zoom way out here and get back to the right page. And if I zoom in down here, you can see that this person just went crazy. We've got some spaces, thin space, hair space, punctuation space, and that hard return that's there. So let's take something that we can do with that and actually have it find everything. And that's where GREP comes in handy. So again, I'm going to select just this text frame. So I limit my search to this particular story. And I'm going to go up to this top menu up here, and this says Query. So this has been here forever, even before GREP. You've been able to save certain find change queries. Well, in this case, I want to find change something that I've done a bunch, and I want to save it. So every time I create an expression, I can actually save it by clicking the little Save Query button, and it saves it to this menu. Now, your menu is not going to be quite this long, but you do have something in here already. This center section between these 2 lines, this is all GREP, and a couple that are built in there by default with InDesign we can use all the time. So let's zoom down in here and let's actually zoom in so we can see that. And it says multiple space to single space. Now you should only have it there once. Mine are multiplying for some reason. So if I choose multiple space to single space, I will get rid of those double spaces, whether they're M spaces or regular spaces, whether they're that crazy one at the end in that second to last paragraph with multiple spaces and tabs and whatever else. But it can take multiple spaces and replace it with a single space. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And keep in mind, this is built in. You already have this. So when I look, it's kind of this crazy long find what expression. Well, basically, everything that's between those brackets, those are wildcards for the individual types of spaces that InDesign has. So basically, all it says is find the M space, the N space, the thin, the flush, the hair, the punctuation, all the different types of spaces. And then in the end there it says 2 comma. Now I kind of give you a preview of what we're talking about for how many times. So this says 2 or more times. And again, I'll cover that in a future video. But now I know that even if I have 3 or 5 or 18 spaces, it doesn't matter. It will take that and it will change it to \S, which is a space. How do I know that? Well, I come over here and there's a menu here as well for when I want to replace it with something. Because one thing you might find in GREP is that one thing, a specific character up in the find what might mean one thing and it means something else in the change to field. And that can get kind of confusing, not gonna lie. But I like to use the pull down menus for everything. If it's there, I want to use it. That way I know it's correct. So it says find all of those spaces 2 or more times and replace it with space. So let's just say change all, tells me 5 replacements were made. And I'm gonna now jump back down to where I had those crazy spaces at the end. Those are gone. All the double spaces are gone that were here as well. All those multiple spaces are gone. And the last one I want to show you is similar to that. And again, happens a lot when you get text from other people. You've got tons of extra spaces, and you also have extra paragraph returns. And anybody that's ever taken any sort of training from me knows that we're not supposed to have double and triple and whatever else paragraph returns. We want to have one. We want to have a return at the end of the paragraph and then the next paragraph starting. We want to give it the paragraph's breathing room by setting that into our style to say space after or space before a paragraph, but not these extra hard returns. So let's get rid of those. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my frame is selected. I'm going to make sure I'm just looking at the story, and I'm going to go back to the query menu, and I'm going to choose multiple return to single return. And what this says is a tilde B is the GREP expression for a break character, or in this case, a hard paragraph return, followed by another break character. And what this plus means is, again, it tells it how many times. We tell it when to end the pattern. So if I just said break pattern or break character followed by break character without that plus, it would be fine here because it would find the first break character followed by a second break character. But this paragraph, because it ends here and we have 2 more, it would not fit that pattern because it's actually 3. So what this extra little plus does is that says 1 or more times. So there's definitely a break character, which is fine because we need the first one to change the paragraph, followed by a break character 1 or more times. So that is 5 returns, 8 returns, it doesn't matter. And again, I find that little plus over here in the special characters feature. And we'll talk about the plus and how that works in a future video. But feel free to play around with what's in there, poke around and see what you can find in there. Not everything's under the wildcards. Some of them are locations or repeat. There's that 1 or more times. How many times does it repeat? Where does it occur in the paragraph? What is it specifically? What type of character is it? All right, so we'll go back to this search here. Break return followed by break return 1 or more times, and change it to, now it doesn't say break character, it says \r. Although you might find that the ~b works or the \b works or \r. I chose \r because that's what's in this particular pull down menu. So I can say end of paragraph and that gives me that return. Now by doing that twice, I just told it to put 2 returns in there. We don't want that, just the 1. And I'll just say change all, and 3 replacements were made. It stripped out those extra returns. And like I said, we want to select all that text, go up into the paragraph styling over here, and tell it a little bit of space after. So I can give it some space after. Gives us that breathing room, but we don't have those extra hard returns anymore, causing us problems. So that's wildcards in InDesign, in GREP for InDesign. Remember to use that, that menu that's over here. You can also look for resources. I have some resources and I'll list them at the down below there, and also in the description of the video as well. I have a GREP cheat sheet on my website that you can download, and also a book that I like to recommend is from Peter, I'm going to say Carl, but it might be Carell. I'm not really sure how to pronounce his last name. Kahrel is how you spell it. And he has a book called GREP in InDesign. And I have the electronic version. It's on my iPad. I reference it all the time because I can't remember all of these, not just the wildcards, everything. And so having good resources is a great place. And the last resource I'll mention is a Facebook group called The Treasures of GREP. And I will also put a link to that in the description. So use the resources, play around with the wildcards, start building your GREP expressions. Again, I build them here in the Find Change, even if I take them and later put them into a GREP style. All right, well that was using wildcards in GREP in InDesign. So hopefully that's helpful for you and you're able to start seeing where you could use GREP in your workflow. If you have questions about it or other videos that I've done or just general questions that you want to ask me, go ahead and leave me a comment in the comment section below. Be sure to use the hashtag #LearnWithErica. Also, if you're going to contact me on Instagram or Twitter, I'm @EricaGamet, and be sure to use that same hashtag #LearnWithErica. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up or a like and subscribe to the channel so that you know when I release new videos. I'm releasing those once a week on Wednesdays. So hopefully you'll come back next week and see what I have in store for you. So until next time, bye-bye.